Welcome to the MasterMind Library, the home of the MasterMind Book Club. I'm Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and your host. This is the MasterMind Library. We're reading the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Creation, and we're going to dive right into it. We're in tablet 4 today. All right, so let's go ahead to our virtual book. Let's pull that up. All right, tablet 4. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading and get us started. Tablet 4. They founded a princely shrine for him, and he took up residence as ruler before his fathers. You are honored among the great gods. Your destiny is unequaled. Your word has the power of Anu. O Marduk, you are honored among the great gods. Your destiny is unequaled. Your word has the power of Anu. From this day onwards, your command shall not be altered. Yours is the power to exalt and abase. May your utterance be law, your word never be falsified. None of the gods shall transgress your limits. May endowment required for the gods' shrines, wherever they have temples, be established for your place. O Marduk, you are our champion. We hereby give you sovereignty over all of the whole universe. Sit in the assembly, and your word shall be preeminent. May your weapons never miss the mark. May they smash your enemies. O Lord, spare the life of him who trusts in you, but drain the life of the God who has espoused evil. They set up in their midst one constellation, and then they addressed Marduk their son. May your decree, O Lord, impress the gods. Command to destroy and to recreate, and let it be so. Speak and let the constellation vanish. Speak to it again, and let the constellation reappear. He spoke, and at his word, the constellation vanished. He spoke to it again, and the constellation was recreated. When the gods, his fathers, saw how effective his utterance was, they rejoiced. They proclaimed, Marduk is king. They invested him with scepter, throne, and staff of office. They gave him an unfaceable weapon to crush the foe. Go and cut off the life of Tiamat. Let the winds bear her blood to us as good news. The gods, his fathers, thus decreed the destiny of the Lord and set him on the path of peace and obedience. He fashioned a bow, designated it as his weapon, feathered the arrow, and set it in the string. He lifted up a mace and carried it in his right hand, slung the bow and quiver at his side, put lightning in front of him. His body was filled with an ever blazing flame. He made a net to encircle Tiamat within it, marshaled the four winds so that no part of her could escape: south wind, north wind, east wind, west wind. The gift of his father Anu. He kept them close to the net at his side. He created the Imhula wind, evil wind, the tempest, the whirlwind, the four winds, the seven winds, the tornado, the unfaceable facing wind. He released the winds which he had created, 7 of them. They advanced behind him to make turmoil inside Tiamat. The Lord raised the flood weapon, his great weapon, and mounted the frightful, unfaceable storm chariot. He had yoked to it a team of 4 and had harnessed to its side Slayer, Pitiless, Racer, and Flyer. Their lips were drawn back, their teeth carried poison. They know not exhaustion, they can only devastate. He stationed on his right fearsome fight and conflict. On the left, battled to knock down every contender. Clothed in a cloak of awesome armor, his head was crowned with a terrible radiance. The Lord set out and took the road, and set his face toward Tiamat, who raged out of control. In his lips he gripped a spell. In his hand he grasped a herb to counter poison. Then they thronged about him. The gods thronged about him. The gods his fathers thronged about him. The gods thronged about him. The Lord drew near and looked into the middle of Tiamat. He was trying to find out the strategy of Kingu, her lover. As he looked, his mind became confused. His will crumbled and his actions were muddled. As for the gods, his helpers, who marched at his side, when they saw the warrior, the leader, their looks were strained. Tiamat cast her spell. She did not even turn her neck. In her lips, she was holding falsehood lies, wheedling. How powerful is your attacking force, O Lord of the gods? The whole assembly of them has gathered to your place. The Lord lifted up the flood weapon, his great weapon, and sent a message to Tiamat, who feigned goodwill, saying, Why are you so friendly on the surface when your debts conspire to muster a battle force? Just because the sons were noisy and disrespectful to their fathers, should you, who gave them birth, reject compassion? You named Kingu as your lover. You appointed him to rights of Anu power, wrongfully his. You sought out evil for Anshar, king of the gods. So you have compounded your wickedness against the gods, my father. Let your hosts prepare. Let them gird themselves with your weapons. Stand forth, and you and I shall do single combat. When Tiamat heard this, she went wild. She lost her temper. Tiamat screamed aloud in passion. Her lower parts shook together from the depths. She recited the incantation and kept casting her spell. Meanwhile, the gods of battle were sharpening their weapons. Face to face they came. Tiamat and Marduk, sage of the gods. They engaged in combat. They closed for battle. The Lord spread his net and made it encircle her. To her face he dispatched the Mhulu wind, which had been behind. Tiamat opened her mouth to swallow, and he forced in the Mhulu wind so that she could not close her lips. Fierce winds distended her belly. Her insides were constipated, and she stretched her mouth wide. He shot an arrow which pierced her belly, split her down the middle, and slit her heart, vanquished her and extinguished her life. He threw down her corpse and stood on top of her. He threw down her corpse and stood on top of her. When he had slain Tiamat, the leader, he broke up her regiments. Her assembly was scattered. Then the gods, her helpers, who had marched at her side, began to tremble, panicked, and turned tail. Although he allowed them to come out and spared their lives, they were surrounded. They could not flee. Then he tied them up and smashed their weapons. They were thrown into the net and set there ensnared. They cowered back, filled with woe. They had to bear his punishment, confined to prison. And as for the dozens of creatures covered in fearsome rays, the gang of demons who all marched on her right, he fixed them with nose ropes and tied their arms. He trampled their battle filth beneath them. As for Kingu, who had once been the greatest among them, he defeated him and counted him among the dead gods, wrested from him the tablet of destinies, wrongfully his, sealed it with his own seal, and pressed it to his breast. When he had defeated and killed his enemies, and had proclaimed the submissive foe his slave, and had set up the triumphal cry of Anshar over all the enemy, and had achieved the desire of Nudamad, Marduk the warrior, strengthened his hold over the captive gods, and to Tiamat, Whom he had ensnared, he turned back. The Lord trampled the lower part of Tiamat. With his unsparing mace, smashed her skull, severed the arteries of her blood, and made the north wind carry it off as good news. His fathers saw it and were jubilant. They rejoiced, arranged to greet him with presents, greeting gifts. The Lord rested and inspected her corpse. He divided the monstrous shape and created marvels from it. He sliced her in half like a fish for drying. Half of her he put up to roof the sky, drew a bolt across and made a guard hold it. Her waters he arranged so that they could not escape. He crossed the heavens and sought out a shrine. He leveled Abzu, dwelling of Nudamad. The Lord measured the dimensions of Abzu and the large temple Eshgala, which he built in its image, was Eshara, in the great shrine Eshara, which he had created as the sky. He founded cult centers for Anu, Elil, and Ea. He fashioned stands for the great gods. 146 lines. Fourth tablet. When skies above, not complete. Written according to a tablet whose lines were canceled. Nabu Belshu, son of Naid Marduk, son of a smith, wrote it for the life of himself and the life of his house, and deposited it in Ezida. And that concludes tablet 4 of the Enuma Elish, the epic of creation. I want to thank y'all for being here with me today, because this is something we need to unpack. As my homeboy says, he always says we need to unpack things, but he's right. We need to unpack these epics, these cuneiform tablets, these epics of creation, the Atrahasis epic, the Adapa, the epic of Gilgamesh, and we're unpacking the Enuma Elish as we speak. Right? And we really need to dive into these. As y'all can see, there's some very interesting things that are happening here. We're talking about people using wind and using water for warfare. Well, this is something that is a theory within the Younger Dryas, the deluge, the flood of Noah. There are many theories on how that flood happened. And everybody who was listening, we just read in tablet 4 about how the wind and the water were being harnessed as a weapon by giants that we call the Anunnaki. Y'all stay tuned. Y'all keep listening in. I hope y'all diving in on your own Enuma Elish. And tomorrow, no, excuse me, not tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. Yep. All right. So Monday, we're going to dive into tablet 5 in the Enuma Elish. And we're going to keep going. We're going to keep talking about this. We're going to figure out, the connections here. We're going to grow together. All right. Y'all stay blessed. And as y'all already know, I got to take my daughter to school.